Well, hello there ladies and gents, how the very devil are you? Andy here, off of AndyManCam. And today I'm going to be talking to you about this, the Continental two-piece textile suit from Oxford Products. Oh, that sure is a lot of yellow. Continental two-piece textile suit from Oxford is, as the title suggests, a two-piece textile suit. This particular example, with all of its glorious yellowness, was kindly provided by Oxford for me to test out, but of course there are a range of other colours available. The RRP of this suit is £200 for the jacket, £170 for the trousers. I've stuck a couple of links in the description below, and if you do buy using those links, I will get a tiny little percentage to help support the channel, so thanks very much for that. But anyway, the Continental suit is a non-laminated suit. That means it's using a 3-layer modular system, whereby there's a tough abrasion-resistant outer shell, there's a waterproof membrane underneath that, and then there's a thermal layer underneath that. The waterproof membrane is using Oxford's own dry-to-dry membrane technology, and the thermal liner is using their warm-dry technology. And I have to say, to be honest, it's doing a fantastic job because the temperature is 4 degrees today, and I've just got a single thermal long-sleeve top on underneath this. Now, this suit is designed and intended to be an all-season solution to your riding clothing needs, as shown obviously by the fact that I'm riding right now in 4 degrees and feeling pretty comfortable about it, but also both the thermal liner and the waterproof membrane are completely removable, and also both the jacket and the trousers have extensive ventilation options. On the jacket we've got 2 large vents on the chest here, 1 on each arm, and then 2 more big ones down the back of the jacket, as well as on the cuffs here, big long zips which reveal great big vents. Oh, that's cold just from opening that up. Whereas on the trousers, these cargo style pockets actually unzip and fold completely back, revealing a mesh panel underneath there, so when the weather warms up there's plenty of room to get some air into your jacket and into your trousers. But as the title of this video suggests, and the season in which I find myself, I'm going to be concentrating mainly on autumn and winter, so the colder parts of that 4-season system, both in the cold and in the wet. So a bit more on the features of the suit. It is once again, as you'd expect, 100% textile construction with ripstop reinforcements on the shoulders, the wrists, elbows and knees. As far as protection goes, the jacket comes with level 1 CE rated protectors in the shoulders and the elbows, with a pocket for a back protector, but no back protector is provided. And the trousers come with a set of level 1 knee protectors and some non-CE rated foam inserts in the hips. So they're essentially just there to hold the shape of the pockets. So to be fully protected, you would need to buy yourself a back protector and a set of hip protectors. And all of these, as I've done, can be uprated to level 2 protectors to give you the maximum level of protection available. Oh, and I almost forgot, the knee protectors in the trousers are actually adjustable, and there are 3 different height options, which are controlled by several rows of Velcro strips which decide where inside the pocket the pad is actually fixed. And on a brief note, this jacket and trousers are rated to A on the new CE rating scale of A, AA and AAA, but I've been assured by Oxford that this doesn't necessarily accurately represent the safety level of the jacket and trousers. The gear was just submitted to an A-level test so that there was some level of certification so they could legally continue to sell when the rules all changed. Millions of videos for you to watch on YouTube about what all those new rules mean and how they're being implemented. Oxford's latest jacket, the Hinterland, comes straight out of the factory with a AA rating itself. So yeah, the protection ratings at the moment, a little bit of a minefield. Everything has to be taken with a tiny little bit of a pinch of salt, but the less said about that the better. The jacket and trousers can be connected together. A few different options with how that's achieved. When the waterproof membrane is inside the jacket, there is a full circumference zip, well, except for a bit at the front obviously. When the waterproof membrane is removed, or if you fancy having less restriction, there is a short connecting zip between the outer jacket and the trousers. If you wanted to be belt and braces, you could of course do them both up. And speaking of which, if you want no connection whatsoever, the trousers also have a zip-off braces piece, which means that you can have the trousers support themselves without being zipped into the jacket. Getting into and out of the jacket and trousers is a little bit of a complicated affair when you've got both the thermal liner and the waterproof membrane installed, but what is a tiny bit of a faff when you're getting in and out is actually a godsend when you're wearing the stuff, because every flap and overlap keeps that horrible weather from getting inside to your warm soft bits. On the outside of the suit, we've got a multitude of storage options. On the waist of the jacket, we've got 2 large pockets, each with a Velcro flap on the top, and then a zipped side pocket, so essentially there's 2 pockets in one. There's a large map pocket on the back of the jacket, also with a Velcro opening. Then there's a chest pocket here on the inside of the jacket, but on the outside of the waterproof membrane, and a further chest pocket on either side on the inside of the thermal membrane. Then on the trousers, we've got 2 large cargo pockets here, and then ordinary zip-up jean-style pockets at the top. Although due to the ventilation system that I mentioned earlier on, the cargo pockets on the trousers, if you pack them with too much stuff, or you pack them with unbendable stuff, like for example a phone, then you won't be able to fold that pocket back to open the vents up fully. Although, very important point, none of these outside pockets are waterproof, including the chest pocket here on the outside of the waterproof membrane. Only the pockets inside the waterproof liner will be safe from the elements, will be safe to put your phones and things in. And then finally, to control the fit of the jacket, the cuffs have got Velcro bits to tighten the cuffs themselves up. We've got adjustable straps here on the waist, as well as adjustable straps here under the arms. So if you should take all the liners and things out, you can tighten the jacket down to stop it flapping about, or if you want to put an extra layer or two on, you can let things out to give yourself a bit more space. A couple of other little details. The cuff ends have got a nice rolled neoprene edging on them. Same on the collar up here. And the collar also has a popper closing system, so you can do the popper up and then tighten or loosen the neck of the jacket depending on how many scarves you're wearing. There's also an elasticated drawstring in the bottom, so you can cinch the bottom up, try and stop any drafts getting up there. Oh my word, sunshine! Seen that for several weeks. On the trousers on both calves, they've got a nice high zip, as well as a Velcro fixing at the bottom, allowing you to tighten up the bottom of the trousers depending on how big your boots are. And also, nice little touch, the thermal liner and the waterproof liner seem to have a bit of a bell-bottom cut to them, meaning that I don't think there is a single pair of boots in the world that you wouldn't be able to put these trousers over the top of. As well as the capacious fluorescent yellow patches on this particular model of the jacket, all colours are actually accented as well by these relatively subtle reflective details all over to make sure that when it gets dark, you're going to be reflecting the lights of the cars, going to make sure you're going to be seen. Right then, well, I think that's enough about what the suit has got. Let's go and see what the suit can do. How about we start with some rain? Well, it is now definitely raining. Obviously this style of jacket means that the outer shell functions as a durable water repellent shell, which means it's either characteristically lightly waterproof itself, or it's been impregnated with some kind of waterproof treatment. But that obviously deals with small amounts of rain, and then the fully waterproof membrane underneath, which is known as a drop liner or a Z liner, then does the job of making sure that no moisture at all can get through to your actual body, to your underlayers. Now what this means, of course, is that a jacket like this is great in situations where, like today, I've been out on a ride, it started to rain, I want to ride through that rain to get where I'm going. Quite possible the rain won't even last for the whole journey. But there will be a point, once I've been in the rain for long enough, where this outer shell, this durable water repellent shell, will actually start to absorb the water, and it'll do what they call wetting out, which just means it'll be saturated with water. Now obviously, because of the waterproof membrane on the inside, I'm not going to get wet, but the downside of that setup is that the wet outer shell could potentially cause me to get a little bit cold, because it sits against the outer membrane, and just by being wet it has a cooling effect. Potentially going to see if that's the case here. So far, just 10 minutes of rain, noticing no real ill effects. And the water is beading off of the sleeves of the jacket fairly well, to be honest, but obviously that treatment that the outer shell has is also something which over time potentially wears out, but it can be refreshed, sometimes with as little as just washing the outer jacket and then lightly tumble drying it or ironing it on a very low heat. Spot the guy that used to work at Black's Camping and Leisure when he was a teenager. And although that sounds like it's mainly negative, it's really not, because there are positives, of course, to this drop liner or Z liner system, and that is that when the weather gets much hotter or much warmer, or when you can guarantee that there's going to be no rain, when can you really ever guarantee that? But you can then take the waterproof liner completely out, and then you're left with a much lighter jacket and a much cooler jacket. And conversely, in completely the other direction, when it's cold but it's dry, having a drop liner, a separate membrane in the jacket, causes there to be a slight air gap between the outer shell and the waterproof membrane, which obviously works as extra insulation, and that means that a jacket like this in the colder weather, when it's dry, is going to be a lot warmer than a laminated jacket. But so far, not noticed any real change in temperature. I'm not noticing any leaks of any kind. 20 minutes of rain, all good. It's quite sad really that the only thing that's really letting me down today is the heated grips, and they're the only product in this video that isn't from Oxford. Very, very ironic. Well, it looks like we're through the worst of that rain. It was about half an hour of drenching, and yeah, I think, to be honest, I don't really feel any difference really in terms of temperature. I mean, perhaps Perhaps my arms are a tiny bit colder just because they're getting a little bit more wind chill now that the outer shell of the jacket is wet. But unlike had I been caught in that storm wearing a leather jacket, this jacket is going to dry off relatively quickly. I don't feel wet on the inside, I don't feel cold on the inside. Having my underwear and thermal layer still dry is the real key here, because I'm not going to be losing my body heat rapidly as I continue to ride. Plus, I didn't have to stop to put any waterproofs on. I don't have to stop and put the waterproofs away when it stops raining. Yeah, this textile thing, I'm late to the show, but I'm enjoying the benefits so far. So now we're on the motorway, the infamous German Autobahn, doing about 80 miles an hour, and no billowing or flapping of any material of the jacket. Nothing is vibrating or shaking around. It's all very comfortable, very nicely fitted. There is a tiny little draft just wafting over each of my shoulders, which is purely, I think, because the zips in these vents, although quite tight mesh, they're not completely sealed off, so there's just a tiny little bit of a draft seems to be going through them. But it's a tiny little draft, and I think it would have to be an hour or two of riding like this for that to start to feel like it's getting a bit cold. But the feeling of the sleeves being slightly cooler is a little bit more increased now that we're at higher speed, but again, it's to be expected. If this ride were to be a bit longer and I were to get out of the rain, I'm sure the sleeves would dry off nice and quickly. More testing to be done in that area. Overall, inside this suit at the moment is a pretty comfortable place to be. So here we are on a later ride. I've actually been out on the bike now for getting on for 5 hours in almost continuous rain, and I have to say, on the whole, the news is good. It wasn't until just literally about 10 minutes ago that I actually had to finally put a jumper on because I was starting to get a bit cold. And on the whole, I'm pretty dry. My legs are mostly dry. I've got a little bit of water on the knees. My crotch is pretty damp, although I think, to be honest, that's sadly inevitable with every two-piece because everything directs the water into your crotch area, and obviously there's a gap between the jacket and the trousers, so yeah. I've also got a tiny little bit of water up by the neck, but I think that's also inevitable because of the neck buff thing getting wet, absorbing the water onto my top, and then that soaking in a bit. But that's just a small amount. The most bothersome, I think, is the fact that my wrists are wet pretty much up to the elbows because the waterproof inner membrane of the jacket comes to about here, which means it's not quite long enough to reach to the end of the cuff of the jacket. And obviously the outer shell of this jacket has now become completely soaked. That water's now soaked through, and where there is no inner membrane, the water is then soaked into the sleeve of my underwear garment, and that has gradually soaked up my arm to the elbow. So I think this would obviously be a bit more comfortable if that inner membrane was just long enough to reach to the end of the cuff and make sure the water isn't getting to my underwear. As far as the trousers are concerned, sadly for me, these trousers, I just don't think they're quite long enough. They could do with being just 1 inch longer because they keep on hutching up around the top of the boots, and that obviously means a tiny little bit of water has gotten in around the top of the boots and onto my calf area. But again, not a lot. There's just a few drips and drabs that have gotten through there as the trousers have ridden up, and a couple of times the waterproof membrane has been flapping around out the bottom as well. But on the whole, yeah, the suit has done a great job, despite the outer shell being completely sodden. I mean, I've got my Corona mask in my pocket here on the front, which I took out to go into the baker's to get a coffee, and the thing was sodden. I had to actually wring it out. But despite that, despite the obvious effect of having an outer shell that's completely waterlogged, yeah, I didn't get cold until about 4.5 hours into the day's riding. Of course, the consequences of this situation, just to put everything into context, when I go home now, I'm going to have to hang out this jacket, hang out these trousers, and they're going to take quite a while to dry because they're soaked right through. If you were camping, that could potentially be a bit of a problem. Even if you're in a hotel, it's possible that your jacket, your trousers might not be completely dry by the next day, and that could lead to a rather damp and slightly uncomfortable start in the morning. But I think for most of you, for most use cases, this setup is absolutely fine. I mean, if you've got this gear and you know that you're going to be riding through an entire day of nothing but torrential rain, it's quite possible you'd probably just put a proper set of waterproofs on top, and then you would be beyond toasty warm and super dry for the whole time. But obviously in this rather extreme test, I think it's quite safe to say that the jacket and the trousers have done a great job. 5 hours in nothing but rain, and it has now started to rain again. There was a break of about 10 minutes there, and yeah, I'm still warm. Obviously the dampness in the sleeves is starting to become slightly uncomfortable, but in terms of the bigger picture and the amount of moisture I've ridden through today, the fact that I'm not soaked right through to the bone on every inch of my body is in itself a big victory. So with a day of soaking wet, disgusting windy weather out of the way, the next step is to see how it performs in the freezing cold. Well, here we are after that little wet weather test in a cold weather test on this decidedly brighter, considerably drier, but somewhat colder day. According to my phone and my geographical location, the temperature at the moment is 1 degree Celsius, so it's pretty nippy. And exactly like on the last rides, all I've got on underneath here is a pair of thermal trousers, a long sleeve thermal top, and this time I've actually taken all the armour out of the jacket and I've swapped in the Nox Urban Pro shirt to provide me with my protection functionality. And I've been out on the bike now for about an hour and a half in this temperature, and obviously with it now being clock's wrong, so with it now being 3 o'clock, it's going to get dark in about an hour, so the temperature is very likely to already be dropping. But yeah, in any case, after an hour and a half on the bike, including half an hour on the motorway at 70 miles an hour at the beginning, I'm really, surprisingly, quite warm. It's just proving the point that with the 3-layer system of this Continental suit, you've just got an extra stack up of air pockets, which means the insulation properties of this suit are really quite good. Because we're literally 1 degree above freezing, and after an hour and a half I'm still quite comfortable. I mean, I'm starting to feel a tiny little bit of a chill. If I weren't so close to home, I would potentially consider putting a jumper on now, but obviously thanks to the adjustable waist straps and the little straps under the arms here, there's enough space to let the jacket out a little bit to put another layer on. It is a little bit snug around the wrists. With another layer that is going to be becoming quite sausage-like, but it's not impossible. There is some space there. I'm feeling a tiny little bit of a draft into the wrist area through these zips here, and that same draft that I mentioned earlier over the shoulders is also there. Obviously because of the lower temperature it's slightly sharper, but again, it's taken an hour and a half for me to start to feel the cold, so it gives you an idea of how much of a non-issue it is. It's just a very, very slight draft. And to be honest, the only part of me that is actually feeling the cold really right now is my hands. Starting to get a little bit of a nip in the fingers, which, although it sounds negative, is actually a bit of a hats off moment to the Oxford Mondial long gloves, as my heated grips have actually packed up. They've been sent back to Daytona, which at the moment means I've got no heated grips yet. The gloves are still keeping the majority of the frost off, obviously with the help of the SW-Motech hand protectors there. But yeah, the rest of me very, very comfortable. And just as a bit of a smaller detail, I've actually got the jacket and the trousers connected at the moment with the short connecting zip, so I'm not even fully connected all the way around the circumference of the waistband. It shows that there's plenty of overlap between the trousers and the jacket to stop the cold air getting in. But here we go, just for a bit of a sadistical test. I'm actually just going to open up the vent on my wrist here, see what happens when that's open. I'm going to do the one on the arm here as well. Yep. Definitely getting a bit of a chilling breeze on the whole of my arm now, despite the waterproof membrane and the thermal layer being in the jacket as well. It's a good sign of things to come in the warmer weather testing, when obviously the inner layers would have been removed. Right, well that's all the test I'm willing to carry out with that. It's quite difficult to do up on the move. I mean, I say difficult, I mean pretty much impossible. You need to be able to get your arms straight to get that zip to come up, because otherwise if your arm's bent, doesn't want to do it. There we go. Right then, so with the cold weather testing done and proving that the Continental suit from Oxford is more than capable of dealing with cold weather, it's time for me to start heading home. I'm going to get home before it gets dark, and on the way sum up overall what I think of this Oxford Continental suit from their new Advanced Rider series. The build quality of the suit on the whole is very, very good. Stitching is all very neat. Fabric feels high quality. All of the larger zips and the main zip down the middle and the connection zips are all nice, big, chunky, high quality YKK zips. And then we come to my first real complaint of the suit so far is the rest of the zips. So the little ones on the cuffs here, the little ones in the other vents, they are not YKK and they're not quite so high quality. They tend to hook a little bit more. They're a little bit harder to unzip and zip up one-handed, particularly on the cuff area here, which I've found quite annoying with the amount of times where, see, already it's happened there. All of the mesh and all the lining in here gets caught in the zip, and then once the mesh is caught in there, it very quickly gets stiff and difficult to use. That's what she said. In terms of the performance, I've been really quite impressed with today, me being quite comfortable in just above freezing temperatures, and after 5 hours in the rain the other day, only really being wet in the crotch and the cuffs. The armour pads in the jacket and the trousers, mostly pretty good. They're very comfortable. I haven't felt any pressure points in the shoulders or the elbows. I mean, obviously this is what I'm talking about when the original pads were in the jacket. They're a nice soft comfortable rubber, so they're very flexible and don't really impede upon your comfort. But in that area, the pads on the knees, they do tend to rotate inwards on the trousers, leaving the outside of my knees exposed, which, when you bear in mind, if I fall off, I'm going to go that way. So I would rather have those armour pads kind of tend to roll outwards on my legs a little bit. And connecting the trousers and the jacket together is a little bit of a mixed bag. On the whole, good. Strangely, when you've got the waterproof membrane in the jacket, you can use the full circumference zip. When the waterproof membrane is out, the only thing that's available that's actually in the outer jacket itself is the shorter zip. I mean, that's not a huge problem. I'm assuming that's just because Oxford is thinking that when you've got the thermal layer and the waterproof layer out because you're in the summer setting, you might want to get a bit more air up between the trousers and the jacket. But I personally would prefer to have the option of either full circumference or the short zip in both scenarios. I did also have several times a bit of trouble with the short connecting zip, purely because these trousers have also got the option to have a set of braces which zip into them, and those braces have a separate zip to the short connecting zip, but it's almost the same length and it's almost the same size. So a few times I found it really difficult while fumbling around inside the frills of my petticoat trying to zip the jacket onto the trousers, where I've accidentally caught the braces zip and it seems to start to connect and then it doesn't, and then it gets frustrating and confusing. But yeah, on the whole, zipping the jacket and the trousers together, zipping the waterproof liner, the thermal liner, all that stuff in and out of the jacket is all super easy, and it's even cleverly enough thought out that the tags for the left hand side of the jacket are a different colour to the tags on the right hand side of the jacket, so you don't accidentally put the thermal or the waterproof liner into the jacket the wrong way around. So that's a nice touch from Oxford. They've clearly thought that through. And although I was on the whole pretty pleased and pretty impressed with the waterproofing capabilities of this suit, we do sadly come to the limitations of this 3-layer or drop liner or Z-liner system. And that is that although I was on the whole dry on the inside, the jacket itself was absolutely soaked through, which meant it was heavy, and I actually felt more cold on that day at about 11 degrees than I do today at 1 degree, purely because of that cooling effect of the whole jacket being soaked in water. But I can't stress it enough, that's the swings and roundabouts nature of this whole thing. Because of the setup today, I'm a lot warmer than I would be if I were to have, say, an equivalent laminate suit, which wouldn't have that amount of air gaps, wouldn't have that amount of insulation, and I'd have to be putting my own layers in there to keep me warm. So yeah, it's swings and roundabouts, horses for courses. I was also sadly a bit disappointed to find that none of the pockets on the outside at all are waterproof, which means that anything you put in any of the outside pockets, if you get caught in the rain, the stuff in those pockets is going to get wet. It would have been nice if perhaps at least one of the outside pockets had some kind of a waterproofing membrane in it to keep your stuff dry. You know, if you wanted somewhere to put your phone, somewhere to put your wallet, without having to delve deep into the innards of the jacket for a waterproof pocket. Small thing, would have been nice, but it's not the end of the world. Because overall, yeah, the performance of the jacket and the trousers has been pretty impressive. I've had some cold weather, some wet weather rides, which ordinarily with my gear that I've got already just wouldn't have been possible or just wouldn't have been comfortable. The little trip I did with the Likeable Rider a few weeks ago in Thuringia Wald, it was just a disaster. The gear I had wasn't up to the job, and I had a miserable, suffering time. Purely kept enjoyable by the good banter and high spirits of the team, so check out those videos if you haven't seen them already. Links up in the top right as usual. So with all of the testing and the pros and the cons out of the way, comes the ultimate question. Would I recommend the Continental jacket and trousers from Oxford to you? I think it depends, really. It depends on what you want, depends on what you want to do with it, depends on how much you want to spend. If you're going to be doing weekend rides, short tours, trips where you know that it's going to be primarily good weather, trips where you're going to be able to take your waterproofs and stick them on if the weather gets really bad, then I would say 100% yes. For the money, to my eyes, this is a great suit. Sure, it's not going to keep you as dry as a laminate suit, it's not going to be as light as a laminate suit, but on the other hand, it is going to keep you warmer, and it's going to cost you a hell of a lot less money. How pretty. So if you don't need hours and hours of rain protection, and if you don't need to be able to smash that same jacket on a few hours later and do the whole thing again, then this is totally an option for you. If on the other hand, you're going to be commuting every day through terrible, terrible weather, or if you don't want to worry about putting on extra waterproofs if the weather gets particularly bad, then this perhaps isn't for you. Perhaps you should be looking at a laminated suit but for that you're going to spend a lot more money. Although with that in mind, Oxford do also have a new jacket they've just brought out called the Hinterland, which is a laminate jacket. I think that's coming in actually at only 100 quid more than this one, whereas before that you'd be looking at least twice as much to start getting into the laminate club. Because yeah, the extra cost of the laminate stuff, you get better rain protection over an extended period of time, and also faster drying after you've gotten out of the rain, because this jacket and trousers, after my 5-hour stint in the moisture, it did actually take more than a day to dry in the bathroom. But there you go, that's horses for courses. It's up to you what you want, but for what it's intended, I would say this Continental jacket and trousers absolutely hits the mark, does a great job of it. It's well finished off. I would admit that the yellow isn't exactly my favourite choice of colours, but there are other colours available, and overall I'm impressed. I mean, for me, for the amount of touring I do and the incredible amount of moisture that I seem to be able to attract, it's possibly not the greatest setup, because I need something that's going to keep me protected for hours and hours in the rain. I would ultimately prefer never to have to stop and put waterproofs on, and also I want to be able to hang it up in the hotel room and for everything to be bone dry the next day to start the riding again. But for rides more like this, out for the day, possibility of rain at some point, but honestly can't fault it, and particularly on days like today when it's a bit colder, the setup is perfect because I'm really very comfortable. Otherwise, that pretty much brings us to the end of this review of the Oxford Continental jacket and trousers from the Advanced Rider series. Thank you very much to Oxford for sending these over for me to test. This looks a bit more slippery than I was hoping for at possibly freezing temperatures. May have taken a wrong turn. So as I try and find my way back onto the proper way home, all that remains is for me to thank you very much for watching. I hope this video has been of use to you. I also hope it's been a bit entertaining. If it has satisfied either or hopefully both of those things, please do give me a thumbs up. If you've got any questions about the products, any comments at all, leave them down below in the comment section, and I will do my very best to get back to you. Otherwise, get yourself subscribed to the channel if you're not. Keep your bike shiny, watch out for those slippery patches, and I will see you out there. Ta-ra!